Your wonderful family.
Hello, everybody.
Something I didn't experience.
Chinwag Wednesday. Pilot. Just waiting on Mark to turn up. He's our guest tonight, Mark Fowler. Let me see if I can source the problem. I did tell live to add him in, so whether he's waiting for a link or tap to show the link feature. I wish I had somebody a bit more computer literate with me to help me add Mark in. If you're there, Mark, and can you drop a comment or something? Hello, everybody. Chinwag Wednesday for those just joining us. Waiting for our guest to make an appearance. As I said, I'm shit with phones and stuff, so just waiting on him to make himself known. Evening, Andy. How you doing, me old flower? Keeping busy, me old sunshine? Were you down at Blackfield the other day? Let me see. I'm going to tag him quick at Mark Fowler. No, it's not letting me hyper tag him in this either. How gay. I mean, something a little more politically correct. Guest requests. Right, let me try find. Alright, hold on, we may be onto a winner here. Mark, invite, sent. We might be onto a winner now. I've sent him the invite, so if he don't accept it, that's not me. It's himself. Yeah, how's everyone doing tonight? Everyone okay? Living their best lives, I hope. Out here on a Wednesday evening, halfway through the week. Yeah, good mate. No, I couldn't make it to Blackfield. Live streaming Southampton protest tomorrow evening. Oh, you're there, Mark? Okay, I've sent you an invite. So I just need you to accept it, I believe. Let me see. Mark, add. Send requests. Try that, Mark. Hello, Mark. How are you doing?
Yes, mate. I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Up, I think. Oh, your volume's. It's either my phone shot or your volume's microphone.
Try this. Is that better?
Oh, that's quite bad, actually. I can't hear nothing. How's everyone else? Can anyone else hear Mark, or is that just my phone being do you want to do some level checks there, Mark? Because
yeah. Testing 1 2 1 2. Can you hear me okay?
coming out of my phone speaker. It might be my phone. Oh my God.
All right. Have you got a headset or something?
Let me bloody technology.
Well, yeah. It's always the way. It's always the way, mate. We'll get there. We'll just do a little bit.
I haven't got headphones either, so.
Right.
How's that only come? Let me try.
So they can hear us both fine. Andy,
say something again, Mark.
Yes, bro. I'm here. Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Perfect. Perfect. Lovely.
I can't see you though on my screen, by the way.
Yeah, I used to have this problem with Leon. Can everybody in the comments see me? If you can see me, can you let us know in the comments? Because we used to have this problem with Leon. He never used to be able to see me, but the people in the comments could. So
that's fine. So long as we can have the conversation, that's not a problem. So long as everyone else can see you, that's fine. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Debbie Ward, can you see me, Debbie? If you're watching, unless Facebook's lying to me saying that you're watching when you're not. Yeah, we can see. Yeah. Cheers, Mike. Right. So yeah, this is obviously we're trying something new tonight. We're at Chinwag Wednesday. Obviously we're nearly a year old now. We'll be a year old the 20th of August, and obviously there's a lot of people that have interacted on the page over the last year that we've either only met a handful of times or barely any, or if not none at all. So as I said, I think this is a good way of interacting with people, because like, I found it with the Gazette. I kept saying to the Gazette, like when we were hanging flags, like this isn't just six blokes with a ladder hanging flags. This is, you know, hundreds of people supporting. You know, this is people putting their hands in their pockets. So this isn't just our justification to make. Like there's hundreds of people with, you know, they may be similar viewpoint, but they could be slightly different to ours, and there may be points that some people have very valid points that maybe other people haven't stumbled across or pondered upon. So yeah, this is basically what this is about, is just basically diving into people's heads, getting to know people, understanding where you stand, obviously politically, and what you want for your hometown and the direction you'd like to take, and this, that, and the other. But yeah, we'll start off on the basics, Mark. So, how old are you, and how long have you been in Basingstoke?
I'm a 43-year-old man. I was born in London, but I moved to Basingstoke when I was like 5 years old. So I consider myself a Stokey at heart, to be honest. You know, I grew up in Basingstoke all my life, or for the majority of my life. So yeah, that's me.
100%. And obviously, so what's that? That's 37 years odd, 37
Yeah.
odd years. And so you probably remember a lot about this town that, you know, as I said, I've been here, so I'm 32. I've spent 7 years in Ireland. So in my 32 years of being alive, 25 years have been in Basingstoke. So obviously,
Well,
I've seen a lot in my time. I've seen the town develop. Like I remember, I grew up in Popley, and even watching like the old BMX track in Popley, and where the old new Everest school is now. That all used to be fields, and that's where a lot of my childhood was spent growing up on the fields, which is now Merton Rise, Everest Community College, and stuff like this. And so obviously, just in my short time of being alive, so you're probably, what, 10 years older than me. I hate to remind you.
cheers, mate.
But so yeah, the change you must have seen, it must be even more drastic again.
Yeah, mate, I've got some awesome memories of the old Basingstoke town centre, the old bus station, the old market square, you know, the old Martin's nightclub. I've seen Basingstoke evolve over the last 30-odd years. To be honest, I think it's evolved for the better. I really like Basingstoke. I think it's a brilliant town, actually. A lot of people slate it. They might call it boring Stoke or amazing Stoke. But to be honest, I actually think that we've got a really good town and something that we should really appreciate and hold on to, you know? Bear with me, I'm just going to put the light on. I'm going to switch the light on because it's starting to get a little bit dark.
Yeah.
Give me 2 ticks.
No problem. But I completely agree with what Mark said. I think our town is fantastic, and we don't give it enough praise, especially when you look at neighbouring towns. But yeah, I completely echo what you're saying, Mark. As I said, when you look at certain districts of neighbouring towns like Reading, Portsmouth, you know, certain parts of Portsmouth and Reading are just, you know, I saw something today, and as I said, it was the most popular names of throughout Hampshire in 2025, and Portsmouth and Southampton, the most popular name was Mohammed. And it just shows the demographic of some of these places, how much it's changed over the years. Like, because Southampton and Portsmouth, I'd consider like quite big cities. So for the most popular name to be Mohammed, kind of shows like diversity. You know, maybe becoming a bit too diverse. Maybe, you know, like. As I said, That
I
'cause-
mean, you might call it diversity, but what really is diversity? And does that mean having lots of foreign people in a country? Does that really mean diversity? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
anyway, we'll get
100%.
into that.
But yeah. So politically, where would you categorize yourself?
So, growing up, all my life, I was very politically homeless. I actually detested politics. I always thought that everyone was just as bad as each other. Two sides of the same coin. Do you know what I mean? Two sides of the same coin. You could never trust the left. You could never trust the right. And so I was always very politically homeless. So I considered to myself to be a centrist because, well, actually, no, actually, I considered myself to be anti-establishment, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Anti-establishment. But in recent years, I've found that people on the left, which I always consider to be very libertarian, and tolerant and, and nice and kind, have really started showing their true colours. I don't think they really are. They seem to have shifted majorly far to the
Yeah,
left, which is automatically pushed me right
yeah,
of all of their ideas and their ideologies. Do you know what I mean? So, according to some people, I would be now deemed to be a far right wing extremist,
yeah,
but I'm not. I'm a patriot. I do believe in, national. I do believe in borders and a sense of national pride. So I
yeah,
don't know if that makes me. If that makes me right wing. I don't think it does. I think that a centrist can still be a patriot in today's era. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the left don't tolerate anything that showcases any sign of patriotism. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so, therefore, in today's climate, I would just call myself centre right now. Centre right.
Yeah, because this is what I mean. I think the left have it very misconstrued about what far right means. I mean, back in like the 80s, 70s, 80s, obviously the far right was the National Front, who was, kicking up. I wasn't around in that time, but obviously done a lot of my research. And yeah, do you know what they imagine the far right is? You know what I mean? And and to call us it just shows how little understanding they have. And like when they call us word like Nazis, when Hitler was a socialist, how can you
Yeah.
it's beyond belief.
Well, I think it's a political gameplay, and I've looked into this. So I've looked into the concept of modern day political warfare, and one of the things they're deploying is something called it's a smear campaign. So anybody that doesn't fully agree with their ideologies, they will smear them, unfairly. That's why we're hearing so many lefties using this loaded language today, such as "you are a fascist," "you are a racist," "you are a white supremacist," "you are a neo-Nazi." All of these kind of things, they're just names.
Yeah,
And it's a massive smear campaign, if you ask me, and it's just going to come back and backfire on them, because at the end of the day, you have to judge people by their actions, not by the fact that they hold a sense of national pride.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And I really detest being lumped into a category. I don't like being labelled, and I think they know that. And I think they do it deliberately to get under people's skins. I think they're actually quite nasty and vindictive. And in actual fact, I also believe that they are projecting their own fascism and their own racist, because I think that they see the world through that lens. And
yeah,
because they see it through that lens, they project that onto everybody else. Like, I can wave a flag to represent my country without even thinking of somebody's skin color. I'm not even thinking about race. I'm not even thinking of immigration at the time when I do it. I'm just thinking about national pride. But those people that wear dark tinted lenses will see racism in everything, and then they will project that onto me and say, well, you must be this, you must be that. And I think, well, I never even considered any of those things in the first place. So where did you get that from? Surely that's coming from you and not me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I genuinely believe it's fear of an argument as well. Like they do anything to be on the other side of the fence to what you're standing on. They don't care what they have to support to be, but as long as they're on the other side of that fence and they can just hurl childish insults at you to stay away at arm's length to not have an actual intelligent debate, you know, like because the thing is, there's in practicality, there are probably some nice personality traits from being on the left. You know what I mean? Like not wanting people rounded up into gas chambers is probably a good personality trait. But
Right, well, it is a good personality trait. And this is the thing.
there's certain aspects, like there's got to be a balance. You like, as I said, we're on a scale at the minute, and it seems like people are either too far this way or too far this way. We need to meet in the middle, and just, as I said, there's numerous people that I've spoke to that were Labour voters all of their lives, and they've said, I haven't left the left have left me.
Left me, right. And do you know what? I feel that. I actually feel that, because maybe 10, 15 years ago, I might have been labelled as being slightly left-wing. You know what I mean? Even though I consider myself to be a centrist, I think that left and right-wing politics, you can hold two values, and you can take the good from both sides. Unfortunately, the left don't seem to want to accept that there is any good to be taken from the right now, which is a shame. I think they've been gaslit, and I think that they have been radicalized over probably a couple of generations, because seems to be like a generational thing, and they're all in cahoots with each other now, and it's a form of tribalist, and they, I think what it is, that old saying, there was that film, wasn't there? You want the truth, you can't handle the truth, and like you say, they will run away from a difficult debate because it doesn't fit their narrative, and so then they will resort then to name calling, and all of that kind of stuff. And it's not going to work. It's going to backfire one day, because I think that, there's only so much name calling and bullying and nasty behaviour you can do before people just eventually have enough and say enough is enough. You can't get away with this. It's playground bullying, and they should know better by now.
The thing is, it's all a game with the left. So we've had it numerous times when we were hanging flags where people were trying to entice us into acting out and acting abreast. And
so they were trying to provoke a reaction.
Yeah, so there was an instance where there was a man who came over and approached us, and unbeknownst to us, there was a woman the other side of the street, assumedly his wife, and she was recording, and he came over in such a provocative manner, expecting us to, probably give him a bit of a fucking kicking or something, so that his wife could have it on the camera the other side of the road. Obviously, we're not stupid, like we know that when we were going out flagging, that there was always going to be people trying to, because as I said, we're much more use out of jail than we are in it. And as I said,
look, I'm not a violent person anyway, and I'd much rather deal with things in a diplomatic process and have these things out like in a verbal, do you know what I mean? A verbal confrontation, verbal conflict, than having to resort to violence. In actual fact, I wouldn't be surprised if one of these far left unhinged people, were to be the first person to I mean, we've seen lots of violence through social media. We've seen, these attempted assassination attempts, and we've seen all sorts of things. I don't want to go too far into that, but you know what I'm trying to say.
But this is what I'm saying, and when was the last bit of far right violence you saw? A few people kicked off after Southport, you know what I mean, like that. If you want to, but that wasn't even far.
But I don't even think that's far right, because that's just people reacting to young children being murdered, and of course people are going to act out of anger and frustration. It's an emotional reaction, and it's normal. It's to be understood,
Because we've literally that was our straw that broke the camel's back. As I said, that it was Southport that kicked us into action and said, no, you know, this isn't right. We're on a bad path. So on that, when did you realise that, oh dear, we're not in a good place right now?
So it's difficult because I think I've seen it for many, many, many years. I've always been a little bit of a conspiracy theorist or conspiratorial. So I do follow global, you know, stuff like this. And I've seen this has been building for many, 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 many years. I think that one of the big catalysts was Brexit. I think that a lot of people on the left have what I would call Brexit derangement syndrome, and they've never been able to let go of that. They've just never been able to let go of that. And it's just got worse and worse and worse and worse ever since. You know, obviously it goes back far before this, but that's when I really noticed the major divide, you know, almost as if we've got like a 50-50 split. And like, as far as I'm concerned, I didn't even care whether we remained or exited the European Union at the time. I had no political opinion. But one thing I did want was for democracy to take place. And so therefore, if we have voted to leave the European Union, then we should allow the democratic process to continue. Do you know what I mean? Not for it to be undermined. I think that if the left had continued to just work with the general public, then we could have pushed this Brexit. We could have pushed leaving the European Union, and we wouldn't be in the position we're in now. And of course, with all these murders, like you said, with the Southport thing, and it's just getting ridiculous. We saw that Irina Zarutska, I know she's not in England, but still she was stabbed in the neck while sat on a bus minding her own business.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was that Roy Lana that took down those people on the bridge. There's so many little incidences.
Rhiannon White.
Yeah, all of that, you know, there's so much. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, and how Stand Up started, it was all, you know, we all worked in the same place, and it started off complaining in the smoking shelter, and it actually turned into serious conversations, like we might have to organise ourselves here because things are going down the pan.
Right.
And that's how all of this started. And one thing led to another, and here we are nearly a year later. We've just literally hit 3,000 followers today. The growth has been surreal. So what made you join Stand Up?
Primarily because I'm a Stokey. I've got a lot of, I don't know, like, I just love my town. And to be honest, I felt as if, right, people were being told, specifically from the left, that they couldn't show a sense of national pride in their own hometown. And I was like, excuse me, you don't even live here for the most part. You know, like, this is our town. Let us deal with our town as we so it's difficult. I don't really know why I joined. All I can say is that I am very patriotic. I've got a good sense of national pride, and I love my town.
Yeah.
And that's it, really.
How did you first hear about us? Did you see the flags and ask about, and then stumble across us, or how was it you came across?
So I think I probably stumbled on you just on Facebook. With me being a person that uses Facebook a lot, you know, these things tend to pop up in my feed. I didn't really know what it was all about. I saw Stand Up Basingstoke, I saw the Union flag, and I thought, do you know what? There are two things that I love. I love my Union flag, and I love Basingstoke.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a no-brainer. I thought I'd join. And then as a result of joining, I've got to meet some really good people, actually, you know, because, of course, I didn't know anyone when I joined the group. So
yeah, and
I'm glad I did.
Even for us, like for us, it's been absolutely phenomenal. Like, as I said, bumping into you when we were flagging in your locality, you know, I feel which is why I find all these smears from the likes of the Gazette and opposing bodies saying that, oh, you're creating division. Well, on our side, it's created nothing but unity. As I said, the only people that have found it divisive are the ones who have a problem with it. You know?
So this is fun. This is funny because I wasn't really. Look, I'm not really. I don't call myself an activist. You know, maybe an online keyboard warrior or something. But I'm not really an activist. I don't go out my way to try and provoke things, and I don't. You know, but I was getting a lot of feedback from my neighbours. They were saying to me, "Mark, you're in that group, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yes." They said, like, you know, can we get flags in our area? I said, well, possibly, you know. And then obviously I did mention it to you at one point. Didn't really expect anything to happen, but it's nice to know that it's not coming from me. It's coming from the community. It's my
Yeah.
neighbours. They want it. They want it, and it's like, do you know what? Everyone's on board. So
Yeah.
when other people come from other areas and they just want to take them down, it's like, why are they meddling? Like you said, it creates so much unity. Everyone, no one has a problem with it.
As
Really?
I said, there's times where people were inviting us into their homes, random strangers off the streets who walking through their streets with a ladder. When have you ever been in the position, seeing three young lads walking down, well, not youngish, I should say, like nearly middle-aged lads walking down the street with a ladder? When would you ever invite them into your home? You wouldn't, would you? And this is what
Generally speaking, no, you wouldn't.
it's been so surreal. Like, we've had councillors pull over their car, stop, shake our hands and give us donations towards, like, councillors. And this is what I mean. And the interactions we've had have been, don't get me wrong, we've had a small portion of the lefties spewing their vile nonsense, but in general, it's been such a community building exercise, and I'm glad we've done it, because going forward, I genuinely believe we need a right-leaning group like ours in our locality. You know,
Yeah.
I genuinely believe the next general election is imperative, and the outcome of it is basically, it was like the Donald Trump Kamala Harris election in the last one. I genuinely believe another 4 years with a Democratic leader over in America especially in terms of the immigration problem they were having. Once they were occupying them swing states with people, and there's obviously certain states they were saying you don't have to show, you're not allowed, it's illegal to show your voter ID. So,
well, this goes to show that this isn't like an isolated England problem or UK problem. This is literally like a Western Hemisphere problem. Every Western democratic country is now having to struggle with the same problems, the same issues. And it almost feels to me like it's coming from somewhere higher up. You know, I actually think it's more to do with a globalist agenda, and hence why they want to do away with national borders. You know, any sense of national pride. And I think that the way to do it would be to attack the Western Hemisphere first. You know, the big countries such as America and England, because once they fall, then, I mean, who is there to stand up against this global agenda? I mean, this could be me. Like I said, I am very conspiratorial.
yeah.
But it seems to me, why would you want to get rid of national borders and national security and the sense of national pride if you didn't have a globalist agenda in the first place?
Well, see, so this is, so as you said, they're going for the big countries first. And obviously, I'm Irish, was born in Ireland. So fucking, the way I say it, I came over here on a boat, and I went back on a boat.
Came over here on a boat.
And I went back on a boat.
I went back on a boat. Yeah, I like that.
So basically, I've had so many people from back home message me, so like when they saw me hanging England flags and Union flags, they were like, well, you got some explaining to do. And I said, look, if the UK falls with 60 or 70 million people, you've got no chance with 8 million. As I said, there's bigger fish to fry right now. We can go back to fucking hating each other after, if that's the way you want to go. But right now, we have so many bigger fish to fry than stuff like that. As I said, the same problems England have, Ireland have. But the only difference is Ireland's government is shafting them big time, because they're basically saying to all the European countries, Send them all over. Send them. Like, they bought City West Hotel, I think it's called, and bought it for 150 million, and its sole purpose is to provide refuge for migrants that like these asylum seekers. Well, as I said, economic migrants, if you ask me, because
Well, so my grandma, my nan, she fled the war. She fled Poland during the Second World War. So you could argue that my nan was a refugee, a migrant, but she came for good reasons. Now, I don't consider myself to be an immigrant, but you could argue that I've got immigration within my family. We all have, to a degree. And it's not really about immigration. What's happened is that it's become more about the open borders system. You know what I mean? It's like nobody cares about migrants coming in so long as they're, contributing to the country, paying taxes, working, doing this, that, and the other. Of course, we have a problem when undocumented migrants come in. We don't know who they are. They're throwing their passports over the boats, and they're coming in great numbers. But they're also coming in, leaving their wives and children behind. So it starts, like ringing alarm bells. You start asking yourself, well, why? Because if I was really, in that position, I would be staying to protect my country, and I would stay to protect my wife, if I had one, and my children. There's a difference when it comes to sets of moral standards. And you don't see people like us abandoning our family to go and live elsewhere for the sake of trying to take over land or whatever it is.
But the thing is, our government isn't helping. They're dangling carrots in front of them. Everything they do is counterproductive. It's they say, all right, like Shabana Mahmood in the last, just before she got ran out, she done a big press conference saying, we're cracking down, we're going to start sending back. We're up in the limit of what we're paying these people, up to £10,000 per person, up to 40 grand per family.
But the thing is, right, so if I was to get conspiratorial again, if you don't mind, is that, like the World Economic Forum have already boasted that they have penetrated the cabinets of both parties in every major Western country. So what they basically are saying is that it doesn't matter whether you vote Labour or whether you vote Conservatives, they are already under the thumb of the World Economic Forum. So the World Economic Forum has this agenda for 2030, and it all plays into this whole globalist agenda, if you ask me. That's why we need an alternative party, someone who's not, like under the thumb of the World Economic Forum, because it doesn't. Otherwise, you're just voting for the same set of policies, but under a different, through a different, they all just wear different masks, if that makes any sense.
I completely agree with you, and especially like the last 14 years of the Conservative government was absolutely treacherous, and a lot of people don't realise is because there's the hotels started under Boris Johnson, and this has been an issue for quite some time, and as I said, as much as Labour are complicit for not. Because as I said, I don't think it's a hard problem to stop this channel crossing thing. A big Navy destroyer in the middle, nobody passes. You know what I mean? They're not going to be able to get through. And as I said, fortunately for the French Coast Guard that has escorted them all the way out there, they're going to have to now escort them all the way back to the shores of Calais. And
well, I watched a video earlier of a load of people from France handing out life jackets to a boat that was crossing over, handing them over and then just sort of leaving them and then going back and then handing over. And you're like, so they're enabling it. I don't think they want them in their country, actually. So they're quite happy to ship them off to another country, to England. Unfortunately, see, this is what I don't understand, is that if they're really escaping like a war-torn country, well, they've already hit France. So why should it then be our problem to take them on from France if they're already in a safe country by then?
This is what I mean, and people don't understand. It's like 6 or 7 safe countries they pass through. They go through Greece, Germany, Spain. They go through like Belgium. They go through so many safe countries before they end up there. And the thing is, so back to the £10,000. So even if I was if I lived in Sudan in a little mud hut, right, and I never had any intention on ever trying to make the trip, if I heard from my cousin who's just got hold of me and said they're offering 10 grand for you to get deported, you know, you're going to say, well, I'm going on holiday for 3 years. I'm going to go make my way to England, and then I'm going to get a free 10 grand for my way back here. And that's, you know,
Well, of course.
that's
So I've done a bit of researching, and there's this concept through, you know, like international law, right? It's actually written into international law now that they are to push for decolonization. So you know how like we have this kind of empathetic guilt, you know, this this empathetic suicide, as we like to call it. It comes from international law. They literally have a policy in place now that states decolonization. So that means that they want to undo everything that historically made the empire what it is today because of suicidal guilt or empathy.
Be considered this immigration situation colonization, though? In my eyes, it's just same thing.
Oh, it is. I call it neo-colonization. Yeah. So it's like a new form of colonization through the back door. So it's a form of gaslighting. They say one thing on one hand whilst performing the opposite act. You know, it's like it's just how they work. It's bullshit. It's gaslighting, and it's what's the word?
Well, dog whistling.
Dog whistling. Thank you. Oh, yeah, mate, you read my mind there. Yeah, it's dog. It's just a dog whistle.
Yeah, and this is why we just need to be organised going forward. And so in terms of what a local group like ours could provide to people like us, what would be your suggestions going forward? Obviously, the flags were good while they lasted. But
so I actually believe it comes down to communication and educating. So I looked into this whole concept of, I think that our younger generations were demoralized. So I sent you a video earlier actually of a guy called Yuri Bezmenov. And in actual fact, I would recommend people watching this to go and do your research on Yuri Bezmenov. He talks about the 4 stages of ideological subversion. And I believe that it takes, you know, a couple of generations to educate minds, the younger minds. And so they've been educated, they've been demoralized to view everything Western to be barbaric, but without seeing any of the good. They're not being taught the good parts of history in schools when it comes to our country. No. You know, and so I think that the key is leading by example, talking to people and educating them, but also focusing more so on the younger generations. I think it's going to take a couple of decades actually to get them on board, for them to understand. In actual fact, I think that the left are going to push the younger generations to become more right-wing anyway. I think everything they're doing is going to kind of backfire on them because they've uglified themselves. So my key is always in communication, leading by example, and educating people. And yeah.
And this is where my old favourite saying, if you give somebody enough rope, they'll hang themselves. And another one of my old favourite sayings to go hand in hand with that, which is why I let the left spew their vile nonsense sometimes, is, you know, what Susie says of Sally says more of Susie than of Sally.
Mm-hmm.
And what that basically means is, you know, the people that might be standing alongside these vile lunatics without knowing how vile these people really are, them spouting that nonsense is going to make the moderate people that, you know, they're going to go, hang on, do I really want to be standing alongside someone who was celebrating the death of a 78-year-old woman getting beaten to death 21?
That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and they don't see it. They still see themselves as morally virtuous. You know, so it's virtue signaling, where they sit on a moral high horse, they point their fingers at everybody else, but they're not able to take a good hard look in the mirror and look at themselves. You know, and the other thing I was going to say is, you know, that's the concept of the useful idiot. The useful idiot is literally where you get a bunch of elitists that will permeate the minds of young, vulnerable people or people with empathy, you know, because a lot of people are very naturally empathetic, and they will use them. They will use them to push their political agenda, and as soon as their task is complete, these people that supported them will be the first people to just be pushed to one side, perhaps eradicated. Do you know what I mean? They
Yeah.
serve their purpose, but a lot of people don't realise it. They think they're serving the greater good, but in actual fact, they're just, they're not. And it's hard to explain that to somebody who is ideologically subverted, because they will never be able to see the truth.
Because
They will refuse it.
there are genuinely some left you can have a conversation with. Like
Yeah.
there was this, she considered herself centre left, and
Yeah.
that was a really, really good conversation with her. And although we disagreed on some stuff, like we managed to find common ground on certain stuff. And you know, like we walked away without hating each other and able to, there's certain things that you're never going to agree 100% on everything. There's factors of the right, like there's a vile dispute going on between the ethno nationalists and the likes of Tommy Robinson and Liam Tufts. Liam Tufts had an ethno nationalist on, and obviously they consider people like Tommy Robinson and Liam Civnats. I can't remember what it stands for. He did say it in the interview, and this is what I mean. Like, so there's factors of the right that don't see eye to eye, but the thing is, what's striking about the left, it seems that no matter how vile of a hill they have to stand on, they will all stand on that hill in unity. There's a flag called an MAP flag, and it's
minor attracted people.
Minor attracted persons flag. So
yeah, I thought this. Yeah,
they are trying to normalise, decriminalise, and change the perception on how people look at paedophiles. They're even trying to change the terminology used to describe a paedophile to a minor attracted person. So it's
well,
not.
this is Orwellian doublespeak, right? So what they'll do is they'll take the word paedophile, they'll fluff it up with sprinkles, and it will soften the harshness of the word paedophile, because they can hack that. They don't like the word paedophile, probably because it makes them realise, maybe look internally or something. But what I'm saying is that with this, sorry, I lost my point.
It's Orwellian.
Yeah, the Orwellian doublespeak. Yeah, and it's so what I was going to say is that, of course, when it comes to politics, we've got an Overton window, which is basically the centre. But the Overton window has shifted majorly far left, and for the most part, like you said, I know lots of people on both sides of the political spectrum, both left and right, and I get on with 99% of people. But what we're seeing is radicalisation. So what I'm talking about, and the people I don't like, is what I call the far left. And because the Overton window has shifted so far left, anyone who was deemed to be centrist back maybe 10, 15 years ago has now automatically been pushed sort of right of the political sort of like bar, if you want to call it. And it's like, no, nobody's moved except for the left. They've become so far left, and they're trying to normalise. This is actually part of ideological subversion as well, because you've got demoralisation, and then you have to have crisis, and then you have to have after that crisis, they do something called normalisation. So it becomes normalised in the public view, and so young generations that grow up don't know any different. Yeah, they've placed themselves in that position, and they keep spouting. And when you tell a lie over and over and over and over again, people start to believe it. And I think that's the problem: is it's the young kids that are being indoctrinated in the schools to become anti-Western, to hate everything to do with national pride, Englishness, whiteness. I don't even know why they even bring race into it. Race was never really a massive issue here in the UK. It was always an American thing. You know what I mean? But It seems that we've imported that racism now, and I think that it was all done by design.
And so you're right. You chuck enough shit at the wall, it's going to stick in it. And it's like we posted a picture yesterday, a little post yesterday about Mr. Munch. About I went to breakfast with Mr. Munch, and it was great. And then someone's commented on there saying, "You do know a Turkish family have cooked your breakfast, right?" Insinuating that basically we've got a problem with basically. Anybody that's not.
Yeah, anyone who's not English or something.
And this is what I mean. I went and got my hair cut yesterday at Golden Scissors opposite the Maidenhead Inn, top of town. Like later on, I went and got a kebab from the kebab van from Smiley's in Swing Swang Lane.
But this is why. Hang on, sorry to interrupt, but this is why I actually think the left are racists themselves. It's like I said earlier. I think that the far left. I think they are racist themselves. They insinuate and they project every action that we do into race, right? But then when we argue about immigration, the first thing that they turn around and say is something along the lines of, well, who's going to wipe your bum then? Who's going to do this? Who's going to drive your taxis? And you're like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like, we're not incapable of running our own country and doing our own jobs. We don't need to import people from third world countries or from impoverished countries to do the bottom end jobs, but they seem to think that that's their purpose and that's the reason why we need them so much because, the NHS. But It's like, well, hang on, the more people you import into the country, the more the NHS is overwhelmed anyway. So just importing people to become doctors and nurses, I mean, what percentage of those people that are imported are going to become doctors and nurses, and what percentage of those people are going to have to use the NHS, therefore creating more pressure on the NHS in the first place? So I think that they, like I said, they tend to attach everything to racism, where we don't see it. So I call it like we walk around with rose-tinted lenses, whereas they walk around with racist-tinted lenses. Now, we can see something and go, I really like that, and then for somebody then to turn around and go, wow, do you not see the racist connotation in that? And you're like, no, I actually didn't see that. And they're, wow, you must be a far right. It's like, mate, you're the one that brought that up in conversation. You're the one that's thinking that way. That's your mentality. So you must be the racist and you're projecting it onto me. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
And this is how blind they are by their own derangement. My best friend is a black man from Zimbabwe.
Right.
And he came around my house shortly after starting. I think it was after our first protest. And we were obviously front of our house covered in flags, right? And letting in my best mate, who is a black man, blacker than Newgate's knocker. I was letting him into my house, and fucking some little kid on some little lefty prick rode past on a bike going, racist cunt. And my mate from Zimbabwe, he's looked at me and he's like, he just called you racist.
Mate, so this is very similar because one of my best friends used to hang around with each other all the time. I haven't seen him for a little while because he's moved on and doing his own thing, but he's from Kenya. And he's very, very, very dark black skinned, And see, this irritates me because when the left turn around and say blacks versus whites, I don't really understand that anyway, because I say, well, what do you mean by a black person? My friend from Kenya, right, might be different from a person from Somalia. So you can't call all black people blacks. You can't call all whites. You have to be very specific. Like, this is my Kenyan friend, and it's like, so that my Kenyan friend will be different from my friend from Cameroon. Yeah. My Cameroonian friend. Exactly. And so, like, yeah.
I go to a Seventh-day Adventist church when I was younger, and it was mainly just African people, and there was people from Ghana, from Uganda, my family from Zimbabwe, Nigeria, obviously a lot of them from Lagos, and so do you know what I mean? When people call me racist, it's unbelievable, because I guarantee I could whip out my phone and I could get in contact with more people with diverse backgrounds than the people that have called me racist, because they're all white liberals. I've never been called a racist by a black person, we've had so many people of different backgrounds saying, oh, I love the flags, do you know what I mean? And I've even said to them, I'm like, so you don't feel any intimidation enough? No, I really love it. There was when we were doing Winklebury Way, the best interaction we had, there was a guy who pulled up and he was a unit. This black guy, he was solid, honestly. Like, got out of the car.
That's like my friend that I was talking about a minute ago. He's hench, mate. He's massive. Together we look really odd, like chalk and cheese, but we've got so much in common, so many similarities. But yeah, sorry to interrupt.
But yeah, he came over and he shook our hands. He said, I used to serve under that flag for the forces. He said, what you boys are doing is brilliant. And he gave us 20 quid. And we said every time we have an interaction with a person of a different background, I always say to him, like, people say that this is meant to be intimidating for you lot, but that's not what it's intended for. And they're like, we've never took it at that. So it's people of white privileged backgrounds that are creating this narrative.
I completely agree. And so going back to my Kenyan friend, I don't want to use his name. I'll just keep calling him my Kenyan friend. Going back to that, you know, I asked him, why did you come to England many years ago when we first met? And he said, because, you know, I appreciate essentially, in a nutshell, he's a capitalist. He basically likes his trainers. He works hard. He works hard. He's an engineer, like a proper engineer, electrical engineer. You know, he earns a decent salary. He likes his good things. He likes his nice things, his trainers, his cars, you know, this, that, and the other. He actually loves the capitalist nature of what this country has to offer. And it's funny when you say that these white liberal types, you know, they're the first people to turn around and say capitalism is evil. And it's like, well, hang on. The people that are coming into this country from other countries, African countries, are saying the opposite to what you're saying. They're coming in here because of the capitalistic nature of our country, because it gives them opportunities to grow. You know what I mean? So it's very weird, yeah. And I think I don't really know why they're doing it.
The thing is, it's very confusing as well, because the left preach about human rights and the decent treatment of people. Surely the most humane thing they can do for these boat people is stop the boat crossings, because it's a treacherous journey. They're risking life and limb. And, you know, I genuinely think that they should be not campaigning against the campaign to stop the boats, but maybe campaign for a better way of them getting hit, and a better way of screening potential people. Because don't get me wrong, like, I do believe there are certain situations where asylum could be deemed necessary, but not at the level that it is. As I said, 40,000 people a year of God knows who, you know what I mean? Don't know who they are. If there's a way to do it, this isn't the way to do it.
No, and so going back to that, oh damn, I had something on the tip of my tongue. You'll have to bear with me. Yeah, go on. Sorry, Karen. I think I interrupted you anyway.
No,
I had something and I've lost it.
Saying there's a better way of, if you're really about the welfare and the well-being of
That's it. So I was going to actually say that mass immigration on a huge scale, or illegal crossings, I actually think impoverishes some of these poorer nations. Yes, of course, there are people that legitimately, you know, need refugee status. Legitimately, that's got nothing to do with skin color either. I know people that have had to seek refuge from Russia because they live in such a persecuted communist country. But people don't think of that on the left. They only think of immigration when it comes to skin color and fairness and equity is what they're trying to achieve. But I actually think that we're impoverishing some of these poorer nations, you know, because with the birth rates that they have versus the amount of people that we can bring into these countries, you know, their birth rates are always going to be larger than the amount of people that we can possibly ever bring in. The best way, in my opinion, to help a country is to help them directly in their country, you know, not to have them escape, you know. So it does take international intervention, I suppose. Yeah. But the best way, I believe, that we can help all of these poorer nations and these impoverished people is to directly get involved and go and sort it out in their own countries and help them to build their own education system, their own, you know, like whatever it is that's going to lift them out of poverty. But by simply bringing some of the poorest people over, you know, we're not going to be able to solve international hunger and starvation and war and famine by just bringing people into the country. All it's going to do is create a more dangerous environment in our own country. And then what happens then? Yeah. If we can't help ourselves, how are we going to be in a position to help anybody else? And in actual fact, one last thing, sorry, I do talk a lot. One last thing I was going to say is that I believe that the people that benefit from this the most are the elites, because I think that human trafficking is what I see it as, actually. I don't see it as illegal immigration. I see it as a business of human trafficking. And as we know, human trafficking is a very, very, very lucrative business. Some of these people, they pay thousands of pounds for a crossing, you know, and it's like, well, where does that money end up? I think it ends up in the hands of these human traffickers, and I believe that the elites are part of that network and that system. So it's got nothing to do with compassion. It has everything to do with business, elitism, globalization, and using, useful idiots to achieve their to line their pockets.
Left is meant to be, so like you go back to the left of the 60s, you know, they're meant to be so anti-establishment, and you know, they don't need money, they're not, is, you know, people over profit, you know, that's meant to be the original left agenda. But when you see a left government that is profiting, pumping money, getting, it's contrary to everything that the left are meant to be about. You know?
Yeah, they've been warped. They've been warped, and you know, they talk of them being like this anti-fascist, Antifa and so on and so forth. But actually, they act very fascistically. You can see it through the actions. They silence people's freedom of speech. They don't want to have a genuine debate. Instead, they'll just start calling people names and smearing people, and you realise, well, that is fascistic behaviour in itself. And it's just something that I couldn't get on board with. You know, like I said, I could have easily identified and moved over to the left side of politics had they perhaps stayed on course with what they initially stood for originally. But because I've seen it, I've seen them warp to become the exact opposite thing that they preach to be. I'm like, nah, sorry, mate, but I'm not stupid. I'm not falling for that trick. And I'm not going to be sucked into that. No,
100%. And this is the crossroads where we're at now. This is why with the work we've done at Stand Up, because we've almost been the cannon fodder, if you would, for Basingstoke. You know, before there was never really anywhere you could go to vent your problems or vent what your issues were, and vent your distaste with the direction that the country was heading without.
I really appreciate it, man. It's nice to have that space. One thing that I do worry, though, is now, like, that anytime I associate with anything to do with patriotism in any which way, shape, or form, I don't like this whole being labelled, you know, like by the left. I know it's inevitable, and to be honest, I'm not going to be afraid of these, you know, sticks and stones and that can break my bones. The trouble is, I feel they're very unhinged, and what they're doing is they're unfairly positioning me in a place for having an opinion, you know what I mean? But I really want to speak out to the people on the left. I want them to realize that none of being patriotic to me has anything to do with race. Nothing to do with race. No. And I don't understand why they can't see that. I want them to know that I'm actually a really nice person. You know, if people don't understand who the first time I get on with everyone. You know, I worked in care for 12 years. I've done my bit, you know, and a lot of these people, well, why don't you, get a job and this, that, and the other. It's like, no, you don't realise how much good I've done for the world.
And this is why we don't look at ourselves through the eyes of people that hate us, because no matter what we do, it will never be enough. And
yeah, it's never enough, because you can do this, you can do that, you can do that. I've saved people's lives. I've wiped people's backsides. I've saved people from having epileptic seizures, having to give them EpiPens. I've had to give people resuscitation. I've done all sorts of stuff. But do you know what? After all of that 12 years of saving people's lives, for me to get labelled as a hateful person, it really is like, I think that's why they do it, to get under people's skin, because it's like, you're judging me, you don't even know me, you don't know how much I've done for the world. In actual fact, I believe I've saved more people's lives than any one of them possibly could care to imagine and understand. And I just need people on the left, if any of them are watching this, I need you to understand, please, that we're not horrible people. Well, I'm not. I can only speak for myself. I don't know other people's motives, okay? There may be racist people out there that use the flag to display signs of racism. But that's not me.
No,
it's not me, and I don't think it's Stand Up Basingstoke either.
No, that's not what we're about at all. As I said, we had Harry and Nathan when we first started, two Sikh lads, were in our original flag flying group, and you know, it was never about race. It was never about being like it's English or no one. You know what I mean? Like, and the thing is, like, for as I said at the beginning of the video, like, for all the division they're saying we've caused, I've seen a whole lot more unity, and there's a community now that's in Basingstoke that wasn't there before. You know, like,
Yeah.
there's nearly 2,500 people in a private group that wasn't in, that were been unbeknownst to each other before, but were brought together through similar ideologies. Or, you know, there's obviously a few spies in that private group, we're fucking well aware of that. But as I said, they spent God knows how many days and weeks going through every single post, screenshotting what they considered to be the worst of the worst on our page. They sent it to the Gazette, they sent it to Luke Murphy, they sent it to the police sent it back to them, returned to sender, no case to answer. And this is what I mean. So we've got Facebook community standards saying that there's no breaches. You've got the police saying that there's no case to answer for. Yet they're still convinced that there's fucking racism there. I get annoyed. I shouldn't be swearing, but
No, it's fine. Look, it's a free, it's free speech, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with swearing. We're not. It's not like. Anyway, but no. One thing I was going to say is that. Oh mate, I keep going blank. What were you saying a second ago again?
basically, so you've got two separate official entities there within Facebook community standards and the vocabulary saying that there's no case to answer for. There's no xenophobia. There's no Islamophobia. And
one thing I was going to say though is that I mistrust the far left so much that I actually, or that even centre left people were showing signs of far left behaviour, almost as if it's normalised. But I wouldn't be surprised if they would deliberately plant people into your group to cause trouble, to then say, see, I told you so, and then blame it on the group itself. That's how vindictive they are. So instead of actually allowing the behaviour to show itself for what it is, they would much rather, I believe, vindictively, if they could get away with it, plant somebody in your group to act or to pretend to be one of you. Do you know what I mean? Or one of us. Does that make sense? And it's like, this is how nasty they are, in my opinion, is that they would deliberately go out of the way. It's just, yeah. And I don't really understand. See, for me, this is no longer about left versus right. It's just good versus evil. There are genuinely nice people, decent human beings out there, and there are arseholes out there that will do anything that they can to discredit somebody else. I think it's jealousy, resentment, and I think that it's because they would much rather take everybody else's achievements down because they don't have any for them of their own, you know, and it puts them in a position of superiority, you know.
This is why we stay tight-lipped about our enemies. As I said, we've built up a following of 3,000 people within a year. You know, like last month we had 1 million views. This month we've had 500,000 views. It pays these attention seekers to go against us. You know, it's in their best interest. If you're a little attention seeking, and you're just you're just, as you say, bitter, and you're trying to look for your 5 minutes in the spotlight or your little bit of relevance. Yeah, and this is what I mean. Like we're responsible for the other side uniting and organising themselves. So realistically, for all the division they're saying we've created two groups, if you ask me. Working. So where's the division? Like there's a divide between the two mindsets. Of course, there's always going to be, but that divide was there long before Stand Up Basingstoke came about. You know.
Oh yeah.
I said that's been here since Brexit. So don't try blame the divide on a few flags hanging from a lamppost.
I blame the divide on left-wing politicians. Every time they get in power, they use these slurs, they use these labels, right? And they're the ones that start going far right, the far right, the far... And all of a sudden, it's like it becomes normalised, where these people on the left actually have no mind of their own. They're only regurgitating what the left-wing politicians have regurgitated themselves over and over and over again through repetition until they go, oh, I understand politics, you know. All they're doing is repeating. They're not actually independently thinking for themselves. They're not actually using their own sets of critical thinking skills. And a lot of them go, oh, data, data, data. It's like, mate, but data can be manipulated, especially if you've got a bunch of activists in, like academia that want to sway public opinion. They will easily manipulate the data. But left-wingers like to go, oh, where's your source? Where did you hear that from? That's not a fact. Stats and statistics, facts and figures. You're like, mate, don't you have a brain? Can't you actually just use your brain and stop going, oh, the stats here, the figures here, where's your source? Where's your source?
I'm, I'm very cynical when it comes to, like, especially surveys. Surveys I really get in my feelings about, because it would say, like, did you know 50% of men have thought about suicide? And it's like, hold on, you've never asked me this.
Right, I mean? Yeah.
So 50% who? Like, this is what I mean. So when you're talking stats and statistics, like in science, I remember growing up in science, you've always got to make sure it's a fair test. If you're trying to make test like the difference, everything has to be fair. Everything has to be the same. And and it's I forgot what the point was beforehand, but yeah.
No, that's great, because that leads on to, because they talk about like the new scientific model these days. It's like conclusion, bullshit. No, was it like a theory, bullshit, conclusion, which seems to be the norm. Back in the day it was fair, theory or whatever. You'd come up with your, and then you'd have to go through all the fair tests, and you would have scrutinization. So one thing I was going to lead on to was, a lot of people would argue, no, but everything is checked, by external bodies. You've always got like, the consensus, the overall general consensus. And I say, yeah, but what if these scrutinizing bodies have all been ideologically subverted themselves? They're all going to act in cahoots with each other. You know what I mean? But a lot of people can't see past that. And I would say, because every time they get some sort of pushback, that goes against their narrative, they will just be labelled as being a conspiracy theorist, or somebody who's not to be listened to. We saw it through pandemic. We saw it through the scientists that were speaking against the vaccine versus the ones that were saying for the vaccine. I'm not going to get into that too much. I'm just saying that one set of people were demonized more than the other.
Yeah, 100%. And that whole situation, that was, I think no matter what side of the political thing you're on, I think there was people from both sides that were obviously skeptical, but as you said, one side was villainized more. That was, to me, that was mad. And I never took the jab, not out of conspiracy, not out of, but as I said at the time, so what would that have been, 6 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to segue too much into the whole speaking of the vaccine, but I was using it as an example just to showcase that I think one side of the political spectrum gets to dictate more over the other.
But yeah, as I said, you're probably best off sticking off that topic.
Yeah, I know. I want to be politically diplomatic on this one, because I don't want to get too much into that.
Like as I said, I think we'd agree on a lot about that. But I think I said, we stay in our lane. As I said, focus on what we agree on, because as I said, there's going to be a lot we disagree on, but we need each other going forward into this next election. It's a vital time.
The thing is, not everyone's going to 100% agree with everyone all the time anyway, and I don't want to live in an echo chamber, I want to associate myself with like-minded people, and to be honest, I know there's going to be things that we agree with, and there's also going to be things we disagree with, but that's part of human nature. We need to learn to tolerate each other for our agreements and our disagreements, so long as we can get on with each other, civilized, which is what, a lot of people have a problem with these days, and there are going to be people in this group that probably completely disagree with everything that I've said. There are going to be people that say, no, actually, Mark, you're wrong, and they will have their own reasons for joining the group. They will have their own reasons for wanting to fly the flags, But I can only speak for myself. And I just don't want people on the left thinking that I live in some kind of bubble or some kind of echo chamber where we're all the same as each other, because we're not. Everyone's an individual. We've all got our own thoughts, and we've all got our own minds. And
this is what I said to the Gazette when she was interviewing me, Emily. I said, like, it's all well and good interviewing us six, but as I said, as I said at the start, it's more than six lads with a ladder. Go get in touch with some of our community, and she never once reached out, never once, and it just goes to show what side their bread's buttered, really, because they weren't interested in our side of the narrative like usual. They just wanted to, and
Yeah, they wanted to smear. All they wanted to do was find a gotcha. They wanted to find a reason to smear you as being far right, probably, without actually really wanting to dig deep enough to fully understand. It's very easy to, come to a conclusion in 5 minutes without actually doing your research. It just goes to show that they're not very good journalists.
No, and this is what I mean. Like, there was a few things I wanted to call him out on at the time, but I was like, "No, I'm not doing your job for you." She was like, "I don't know why your page is public," and I felt like saying, "Well, we've got a public page," but in fairness, I should have called her out at the time, saying, "Well, you're shoddy journaling. If you were journalism, if you would have done some research, you'd find out that we actually do have a public page."
Yeah.
Yeah, and
No, of course.
But I was trying to remain amicable for the sake of maybe she won't do a hit piece, but that was obviously foolish of me. But I didn't want to shoot myself in the foot going very hostile. You watched the interview, because I remember watching your video on the your follow-up video, and you gave your little take on it.
Yeah.
I posted the entirety of the interview, and I do believe I was very amicable with her. I was very, and there was just certain things she was a dog with a bone with. She, like the irritating snowflakes on a mass scale, she would not let that go. And if you were to see where that was in our about section, and it was the very last line of the thingy. So it said, "We're Stand Up Basingstoke. This is what we're about." And it was the very last item. So she's left out everything beforehand and just...
Yeah. I mean, I watched the interview, and I could feel the biases remanating from everything that she was saying. She was always trying to find like a little, but she was always doing this pushback, a little bit of a pushback to insinuate that, you must have alternative intentions or something. It's like, mate, and I felt like she was very biased in her reporting in her interview anyway. So I wasn't surprised that she would, and to be honest, she probably got her commission for writing a short article, putting you down. But once again, this is the problem. This is what I was trying to say, where every system gets infiltrated now. It means you can't rely on the education system anymore in the way that we used to. We can't rely on the political system. We can't even rely on basic journalism now without feeling like it's all been infiltrated with far left ideology, which my worry is that it goes into this kind of idea of socialism, which I think is a stepping stone towards communism. And people seem to be speaking very openly about, and positively on the left, about communism these days. And it's like, really? How can that be now? Like, back in the day when I was a kid, people wouldn't be speaking openly and promoting communism. They would have been like, dealt with. But now it seems to be like people can just get away with it.
The thing is, the selective outrage is mad. So, as I said, like, if we were to, like that old bloke I was saying, and his missus was across the road, if we would have acted like they wanted to have acted, then he would have ended up getting a kick in. The left would have been like a dog with a bone with that. Oh, far right racists, absolutely give this fella a kick in, X, Y, Z, and they'd bring it up for the rest of their lives. But
so this is a form of abuse, actually. So if you look in psychology, so an abuser quite often will abuse someone, their victim, and then as soon as the victim acts out and responds emotionally, they will then punish or penalise that victim for acting out of order. So it's the same with the Southport riots, In actual fact, I believe that the general public are victims. We've all been gaslit by our politicians for many, many, many years, told to be quiet, told not to look after our own women and children on the streets, told not to, if we get involved in a fight, then we could be the ones prosecuted, even if we're doing something good. So now we've been gaslit so much. And so we all said, okay, that's fine. we'll all behave ourselves. And then the minute like something major happens, like 3 girls get stabbed in in Southport or killed in Southport, it's like people then react, and then all of a sudden they are treated like they're the ones in the wrong. And this, to me, in psychology terms, is literally psychological abuse 101. That's exactly what it is. There's a word for it as well, where the victim falls in love with their abuser. There's a syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome.
That's it, Stockholm syndrome. And I think a lot of people on the left have this form of Stockholm syndrome. I think that they've been abused so much by their politicians that they've learnt to love their politician, like in the same way that an abused girl can be groomed and fall in love with their abuser.
Yeah, and where I was going with that, with the selective outrage, and obviously if we were to do something like just an assault, they wouldn't let go of it. Whereas something happens like the Berlin Pride March, where, the usual suspect drives into a crowd of I'm not saying that everyone who's gay is left, because they're not. I've actually encountered a few people at protests and stuff who are gay, but they're obviously right, and they feel like...
most of them. I've got a couple of gay friends. I think I know 2 gay people at the moment that I'm friends with on Facebook, and they're right leaning. Right leaning, both of them.
I don't want to generalize when I say this, but but the ones who are left lean, who are far left, whereas they won't let us forget an assault, but they refuse to demonize the actions of something that happened to their community, because it's obviously acknowledging. And as I said, obviously, I know not everybody in that community is left, but yeah.
No, I mean, this is the thing. I think that the LGBTQIA plus, whatever they want to call it, with a cherry on top these days, I think has actually been weaponized by people that aren't actually gay. You know what I mean? They're not actually gay. They just put on this suit of, I'm here to look after a minority set of people, group of people. So they're not even gay themselves. And this is the funny thing. The genuinely gay people I know don't even want to be associated with the trans community anyway. They're like, hang on, do you know what a lot of them want? From my understanding, what they've told me is that they just want to be left alone. They want to be able to live their life as a gay person. They've had to fight, through growing up probably in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s was quite difficult, I imagine, for a lot of gay people, yeah? So they had it back then, and then suddenly they were accepted. Getting into the 90s, everything seemed fine. People didn't have a problem, you wouldn't even question gay people walking down the street. It wouldn't be a thing anymore. Now, with the emergence of trans ideology, all of a sudden now it's brought focus back on to gays, lesbians, all of this kind of stuff. And it's unfair to them, in actual fact. And a lot of them said, that's why they despise it. They despise it because all they want to do is just live a life of peace and get on with it without it coming back to bite them in the arse again.
100%. 100%. So my battery's running though, so we'll do a quick little wrap up, Mark. So yeah, direction. Where would you like to see our group going? Obviously, with us not doing flags no more. Obviously, we're focusing mainly at the moment on community events while the weather is good. But obviously, we need direction, and we want to make sure we're all moving in the same direction. All the legs of the centipede are orchestrated, so we're all on the same wavelength, and we understand where we're going, what the mission is, and what we need to achieve. So, how do you think we go forward? How do you think we grow moving forward?
So I think that, I'm on board with what you're saying. I actually literally was going to say that anyway. I was going to say community networking, getting to know, growing the group, getting out there, having little events, charitable events, fundraising, things that we can do to actually help the
Yeah.
local community actually,
It's
because
obviously a shame that when we do our fundraising, the donations are going to have to be given anonymously because you've seen yourself that our help isn't wanted. Yeah, it's very
well,
unfortunate. I don't want
I
to. We won't name any charities, but yeah, as I said, we've tried donating to multiple local charities, and
but
unfortunately,
we can do things directly, you know. So we can perhaps create our own charity. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't register. I mean, I'm a self-employed person anyway. There's no reason why we couldn't register a charity of our own. Therefore, having full control over where those funds get spent, so long as we can negotiate with the right sort of where we want the money to be spent.
yeah. We were
I
in the
don't.
process of getting applying to become a CIC group. So that's, you know, as I said, I need ideally someone who's somewhat good with taxes and all that, because
Mhm.
I'm about as useful as a knitted condom.
Yeah, that's fine. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit and think about that question. Actually, I'm not going to say too much here.
Michael Laws said the mission is British pride and local community, etc. I've got to say I agree with him, Michael.
Hmm.
And I think he's been watching the whole way through. In fairness to him, there's as I said, so, and this is why I wanted to do this as well. It gives the community a chance to talk as well. But for the last year we've been the voices of the voiceless. Now we're giving the voiceless their voice back. Like, every week we can have. Oh, bat just flew past my bloody head.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But yeah, as I said, I think giving people a chance to come on and, you know, maybe have a little bit of event, have a little bit of a chat, and because this
No,
is what
I
I
think
mean.
I think that's important. I think it's really important because, like I said a minute ago, everyone's going to have a different reason for being here. So it's nice for me to express my reason, and I'm just hoping that people that don't fully understand the Stand Up Basingstoke's purpose, I want them to at least know my reason for joining. You know what I mean? And then perhaps next week when somebody else comes on, perhaps they might say something completely different.
Yeah,
But over the course of time, we can get to know why people are here and their motivations. But I think for the most part, everyone just wants what's best for Basingstoke and best for the community.
yeah,
It seems that way to me. Every time I see something, it's like your friend just said, or one of the whoever that was just a minute ago said that there was nothing like how is anything that we say deemed to be like far right? You know what I mean? When we're talking about is like being patriotic and looking after our communities.
yeah, 100%. Well, as I said, we got our barbecue or not barbecue. I always say barbecue. I don't know why. We got our picnic this Sunday. We've invited Reform's councillor for Southam, which is
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Steve.
Steve Trum, which he's I've got so much respect for Steve, and I believe he's coming. So
Hmm.
it'd be a great chance for a lot of people to meet some local politicians and councillors that, you know, they might not otherwise get the chance to meet.
Hmm. No, that's great. I spoke to Steve Trum on the phone last week. Not for anything to do with that, but because my flat is, you know, due for redevelopment, so they're going to take bash my flat down. There's a whole different subject. But I had to phone him just to have a conversation with him, and he seemed like a really cool guy. So
Yeah,
it'll be nice to meet him in person. And
yeah. I've met Steve on multiple occasions, and yeah, I've got so much respect for him. As I said, we try not to post too much about him because we
yeah.
don't want him being dragged down, his name dragged through the dirt for being affiliated with us, which he's not. He's not. He engages, which is
Yeah, well, one thing I'm going to say, if any lefties are watching and they have a problem with him, I'm going to say that right now that I need him to help me with what's happening with the redevelopment stuff. So if you're going to be nasty for the sake of being nasty, it's not going to just be me who's affected. It's going to be everybody else in Southam
nah.
and Buxton. So just be mindful about when people
No,
want to
but
be
as I said,
nasty.
like he can't be brought down for engaging. As I said, like he's official councillor. He has to engage whether it's people he agrees or disagrees with.
Yeah.
And
as I said, like, just because he engages with us doesn't mean he necessarily agrees or disagrees with us. But, you know, he engages. That's more than Luke Murphy. That's more than any of these other councillors have ever done. And as I said, he's not the only Reform councillor to have engaged with us either. As I said, they're more willing to engage and have the conversation, and that's what England's about, is engaging and debate and freedom of ideas and expression, and that's what we're fighting for. As I said, and people could, the left go, oh, but you blocked me the other day because I called you racist. As I said, one of our rules on the group is debate respectfully. I'm happy to sit here and have a debate with you. But if you're just going to pull out nonsense, childish insults, I'm not fucking entertaining it. I'm too old. I'm 32. I've got, you know, bigger fish to fry. I want to actually engage, and, you know, I want to have the chance of changing someone's mind. How can I change your mind when you're just spouting nonsense? You know what I mean? So, as I said, I'm all up for freedom of expression, but if you're going to just expect to start a conversation with, oh, you lot are fucking racist and I've never heard of you, then that's unfortunately.
Yeah, they're already showing that they're not prepared to have an actual discussion. They're just there to point their finger in your direction, and yeah, it's not worth engaging in that kind of thing. The thing is, as well, with Facebook, it's not even about what we want. Facebook has its own set of community guidelines and community standards anyway, and that is, you know, Facebook in itself doesn't tolerate hate speech and bullying in any which way, shape, or form. And so, you know, you've got a duty of care to your community to be quite strict on people that are coming in and chatting shit, because otherwise they're just going to take the group down, because it will get reported to Facebook and it will violate community guidelines. So you have to be somewhat strict, and it's not even your fault. Our hands are tied. People that run Facebook groups have to adhere to Facebook guidelines. So if they've got a problem, then they can blame Facebook. You know what I mean? That's what I say.
Completely agree. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on, mate. You're the first guest on Chinwag Wednesday. As I said, it was just, I think it went well. You know, there was a lot of decent points made, and I thank you for your continued support. You've been there since pretty much the beginning, I believe. Like, I remember having multiple interactions with you at early doors. So thank you for being there from the start. Thank you for giving us the time of day to at least, you know, not be a judgmental arsehole and just assume that we're racist at the first, without even interacting with us. Like, as I said, I think that's a privilege that's not bestowed upon us very often. And, you know, it's mad. We genuinely are grateful for people hearing us out. And it's the amount of people that feel the same is beyond belief. And as I said, here's to the first year, mate, and hopefully here's to many more. And by this time next year, hopefully Leon's out to celebrate the second birthday.
Well, okay, thank you. So just before we go then, I'm just going to say thanks. I think you're doing a great job. I think it's nice to have a place to go where I feel comfortable speaking openly my thoughts and feelings without being, you know, put down. So, yeah. Keep up the good work, man.
100%. And as I said, any ideas or anything, just reach out. You know where we are. And let's do this going forward. Let's keep Basingstoke the amazing town that we know and love.
Sweet, will do, man. Will
Cheers,
do.
bud.
Take care.
All the best. Bye bye bye. Cheers for watching, everyone. Bye 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 bye.
Bye.